"Sir, could you pretend to be my husband just for one day?" The voice stopped him cold. Eli Turner had heard plenty of strange things in his 37 years, but nothing like that. He turned, the bag of horse feed still slung over his shoulder, the sun casting long morning shadows across the cracked sidewalk of downtown Fairhill, Montana. Standing behind him was a white woman, young, maybe early 30s, with wind-blown hair, scuffed heels, and panic all over her face. Her coat was threadbare, her hands trembling as they clutched a child's backpack. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "What?" he asked, blinking. "I know it's crazy," she whispered quickly, eyes darting toward the street. "But please, just for today. If that man sees me alone again, he'll take my daughter." Eli followed her gaze. A government sedan was parked across the street. Standing beside it was a man in a dark trench coat, clipboard in hand, scanning the area like he already knew how the day would end. Eli's first instinct was to step away. This wasn't his business. He was just a woodcarver, a black man in a mostly white town, keeping to himself up on the mountain. Trouble found people who looked like him more easily than it left. "I think you've got the wrong guy," he said quietly, adjusting the strap on his shoulder. "No," she shook her head. "I saw how you looked at that little boy outside the cafe, the one begging for spare change. You didn't walk away." He didn't say anything. "My name's Emily," she added quickly, her voice cracking. "And my daughter's name is Maisie. She's 6. Please just walk me across the street like we belong to each other. That's all I'm asking." The man in the trench coat turned, spotted them, and started walking their way. Something flared in Eli's gut, something he hadn't felt in a long time. "I'm Eli Turner," he said calmly and stepped closer to her. "Take my arm." Emily's breath hitched, but she obeyed. They crossed the street together like old friends, like partners. Emily leaned lightly against him, and Eli walked with quiet certainty, though his heart beat hard beneath his flannel. The agent stopped them midway. "Ma'am, we were scheduled for an evaluation at 10 a.m. You missed it." Emily didn't speak. Eli squeezed her arm gently, then turned to the man. "She didn't miss anything," Eli said. "We're together now." The man frowned. "And you are?" "Her husband?" Eli answered without blinking. "Name's Eli Turner. We've been going through a hard patch, but I'm taking her and the girl home today." The agent's eyes narrowed. "You're not listed in any file, no marriage license, no shared residence." "Look," Eli sighed, shifting the feed bag on his shoulder. "We don't live by paperwork. I built our place up the mountain myself. You want proof? Come see it." A small figure peeked out from the backseat window of the car. A little girl with big blue eyes and a stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her arms. She looked like she was holding her breath. The agent paused, then pulled out a pen. "I'll be following up. Don't disappear." "We won't," Eli said. The man stepped aside. Eli and Emily continued across the street, and the moment they reached the sidewalk, Maisie flung open the door and ran into her mother's arms. "Mama, I'm here, baby. I'm here." Emily crouched, hugging her tightly. Maisie peeked up at Eli with weary eyes. "Who's he?" Emily looked up, tears trembling on her lashes. "That's Daddy." Maisie tilted her head, then slowly reached out a hand. Eli stared for a moment, then took it. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. Have you ever met someone just for a day, but they changed your life forever? Don't forget to like this video if you believe that. Sometimes one small act of kindness can save a soul. And subscribe to hear more stories like this where goodness still exists and humanity remains the most beautiful thing of all. An hour later, they were winding up the mountain road in Eli's weathered red truck. The feed bag rolled in the back. The wind whistled through a cracked window. Maisie sat between them, humming a tune no one recognized. Emily hadn't said much. She held her daughter close, glancing sideways at Eli as if he might vanish. When the cabin came into view, tucked beneath tall pines, chimney smoking, woodpile stacked neatly beside the porch, Maisie whispered, "It smells like cedar." "It is cedar," Eli said. They parked. Eli opened the door for them. Emily hesitated. "You really live alone up here?" she asked. "Lived?" Ella corrected. "Until now, I guess." "Huh." Inside, the warmth from the fire chased away the edge of October. The cabin was simple stone hearth, pine walls, handmade shelves, a table built by Eli's hands. Nothing fancy, but everything was solid. Maisie climbed onto the couch and curled up with her rabbit. Eli pointed to the bedroom. "You take that. She can have the bed. I'll sleep on the floor if need be." Emily shook her head. "You've done too much already." Eli met her eyes. "Then let me do a little more." That night as the fire crackled low and the wind whispered against the cabin walls, Emily sat at the table sipping warm milk. Her hand still trembled. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Ella didn't look up from the fire. "You said you needed someone to pretend. I used to do a lot of pretending too. Pretending I was okay. Pretending loss didn't gut me," she nodded slowly. "You don't have to explain everything tonight," he added, "but you don't have to run anymore either." Emily's eyes glistened. She looked over at her daughter, now asleep on the couch under a thick quilt. "Just one day," she whispered. Eli turned to her. "We'll see about that." The sun hadn't yet risen when Eli stirred from the floor. His back ached from the hard boards, but he didn't complain. It had been years since anyone else had shared his roof, let alone a woman and child. The fire in the hearth had faded to soft embers. He moved quietly, stoking it with practiced hands, careful not to wake them. Emily and Maisie had fallen asleep on the pull-out couch the night before, huddled under an old patchwork quilt that once belonged to his grandmother. Maisie's tiny arm was slung across her mother's chest, her rabbit tucked under her chin. They looked like they belonged there. He stood at the kitchen counter, grinding coffee beans with a handheld mill. The rhythm calmed him. Everything else about this situation was uncertain, but this he understood. A soft sound behind him. He turned. Emily was awake, sitting up slowly. Her hair was tasseled, and Harry's held the heavy red of someone who hadn't slept well. She tightened the quilt around herself. "Morning," she said, her voice. Eli nodded. "Coffee's almost ready." She glanced toward Maisie, who still slept soundly. She didn't wake up once. "That's rare." He said nothing, just poured steaming water over the grounds and waited. "You weren't kidding," she said softly. "This place smells like cedar and quiet." Eli offered her a mug. "Most days that's all it is." She held it with both hands, sipping carefully. Then, in a smaller voice, "Thank you for yesterday." Eli sat down across from her at the table. "Still don't know why I said yes." Emily gave a quiet, tired laugh. "Maybe we both got desperate at the same moment." They sat in silence a while. "The only sound, the occasional pop of wood from the fire, Maisie's father," Emily said after a long pause. "He was never in the picture." "Not really. I raised her alone." Ella nodded slowly, not pressing. "He died 3 years ago," she added. "Not that he ever helped before that. But once he was gone, I stopped running until his brother found me." Eli looked up. "Brother Blaine Harrow, Social Services. He says I've been lying, that I falsified records, that I'm not fit." She clenched the mug tighter. "He wants her in a system. Cold buildings, locked rooms. She's already anxious. That'll break her. You didn't do anything illegal." Emily hesitated. "I might have bent some truths to keep her safe. Moved around, used a friend's address, but I never hurt her, never neglected her. I just didn't trust the system." Eli leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I don't either." She looked relieved at that. "But you brought me into something I don't fully understand," he added. "And I need to know everything if I'm going to keep this going." She nodded. "You will? I'll tell you everything. Just give me a little time." Eli looked down at his calloused hands, thinking. Then he stood. "I've got chores to do. You can stay here with her. There's cereal in the cupboard, milk in the cooler, wood piles out back if the fire dies down." Emily looked like she wanted to say more, but she just nodded. "Okay." He stepped out into the morning air. Teskey was painted in bruised lavender and silver, a soft fog curling along the tree-line. His boots crunched frost as he walked toward the shed to fetch his tools. His mind kept drifting back to the look in her eyes. The quiet desperation, the fierce protection. He knew that look, had seen it in the mirror years ago when he buried his brother. Loss carved deep, and once it settled in, it didn't leave easily. Back inside, Emily folded the quilt and started tidying the room. She moved with practiced efficiency, though her eyes darted often toward the door, toward Maisie, like she half expected someone to barge in. When Maisie finally woke, she yawned loudly, rubbed her eyes, and sat up. "Mama," she whispered. "I'm right here, baby," Emily said, coming over. "Did you sleep okay?" Maisie nodded sleepily. "Is the man still here?" "Yes, sweetheart. He's outside. His name is Mr. Eli." Maisie looked around the room, then whispered, "It smells like pancakes." Emily chuckled. "I wish." They ate cereal together, Maisie sitting on a stool far too tall for her legs. Emily kept her tone light, but her eyes betrayed every flicker of fear. Her mind was calculating timelines, exits, and excuses. Old habits hard to break. Around mid-morning, Eli returned with dirt on his jeans and a basket of fresh eggs. "Your daughter's awake," he said as she stepped inside. "She's polite." Emily smiled faintly. She had to grow up too fast. Eli set the eggs on the counter. "You two can stay a while longer." Emily straightened. "Really?" He gave a slow nod. "But if I'm putting my name on this lie, I want it to mean something. You tell me everything. No secrets, no surprises. I can't protect you in the dark." Her expression softened. "That's fair." Maisie came running up, holding her rabbit. "Mr. Eli, do you have chickens?" "Had a few. Foxes got most. Still got one old girl named Ruth." Maisie giggled. "Like the Bible. Exactly like that," Eli said with a smile. Later that afternoon, Eli took Maisie outside to meet Ruth. Emily watched from the porch as her daughter crouched beside the chicken coop, laughing as the hens strutted and clucked. Emily sat down on the steps, arms wrapped around herself. Her breath made soft clouds in the cool air. Eli returned after a while, wiping his hands on a rag. "She's good with animals," he said. "She doesn't trust people, but animals don't lie." Eli sat beside her, close but not touching. They watched the trees sway in the wind. "Why me?" he asked finally. Emily turned toward him. "Because you didn't look away when I spoke. You listened." "That's rare." He didn't answer right away. "You're not pretending anymore, are you?" she added. He looked ahead, voice low. "I'm starting to wish I didn't have to." They sat in silence as the wind picked up, rustling the pine branches. For the first time in a long time, Eli Turner felt something shift inside him. Like maybe his life wasn't just wood and silence anymore. Maybe this was the beginning of something real. Or maybe it was just one borrowed day that neither of them would forget. The knock came just before noon. 3 sharp raps, too deliberate to be friendly. Eli was drying his hands with a dish towel when he froze. Emily looked up from the kitchen table where she'd been helping Maisie draw horses with a broken red crayon. The girl didn't notice the tension that suddenly gripped the room, but her mother did. Eli moved to the window and parted the curtain just enough to see the black sedan parked out front. "Government plates," he cursed under his breath. "Stay here," he said, already moving toward the door. Emily's voice was tight. "Is it him?" "I don't know yet, but don't open the door unless it's me." He stepped out onto the porch, shutting the door behind him with a soft thud. The air was crisp, the sun high, casting long shadows across the gravel path. A tall man in a pressed navy suit stood waiting, a leather folder tucked under one arm. His graying hair was slicked back, his expression unreadable. Next to him stood a woman in her 40s, broad-shouldered, square-jawed. No nonsense. She wore dark sunglasses and carried herself like someone used to getting answers. "Can I help you?" Eli asked, his tone flat. Thaman stepped forward, extending a card. "Mr. Eli Turner. I'm Blaine Harrow, Department of Family Services. This is Officer Juliet Mendes from the local precinct. We received a report of a woman and a child residing on this property. We're conducting a welfare check." Eli didn't take the card. "You got a warrant?" he asked. "Just a routine visit," Harrow said smoothly. "A formality, really, but the sooner we speak with the mother and child, the sooner we're out of your hair." Ella crossed his arms. "They're resting. Had a rough night." Mendes stepped in. "Sir, we have legal grounds to speak to the child. You can cooperate or we come back with backup." Eli let a beat pass, then nodded. "1 minute." He stepped back inside, locking the door behind him. Emily was already on her feet, eyes wide. "It's him, isn't it?" Eli nodded. "He brought a cop." Her breath hitched. "What do we do?" "You say nothing unless you have to. Don't lie. Don't volunteer anything. Let me handle the rest." She looked down at Maisie, who was still humming quietly to herself, oblivious. Emily crouched, cupped her daughter's face. "Sweetheart, I need you to be really brave, okay? There's a man here who might ask questions. Just tell the truth, but short and simple. And remember what Mama told you. No one is taking you anywhere." Maisie looked confused, but nodded solemnly. "Okay, Mama." When Eli opened the door again, his expression hadn't changed. "You've got 10 minutes." They entered the cabin like they owned it, eyes sweeping the room, checking every detail. The patched wallpaper, the single light bulb swinging slightly above the old boots by the door. Blaine's gaze lingered on Emily a second longer than necessary. "Emily Rose," he said, lips tightening. "Been a while." "I didn't invite you here," she replied coolly. Blaine ignored her. "Maisie, come here, sweetheart." Maisie stayed behind her mother's leg, peeking out. Mendes knelt. "Hi there. I'm Officer Mendes. We just want to make sure everything's okay. Can I ask you a few questions?" Maisie didn't move. Emily touched her shoulder gently. "It's okay." The little girl stepped forward, fidgeting. "What's your full name?" Mendes asked. Maisie Grace rose. Do you feel safe here with your mom? Maisie nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. Do you know who this man is? She asked, gesturing to Eli. Maisie looked up at him and smiled shyly. That's Mr. Eli. He has a chicken named Ruth. Mendes chuckled, but Blaine didn't. And who is Mr. Eli to you? Blaine asked, stepping in. Emily straightened. He's my fiancé. Silence thickened the air. Blaine had blinked. Excuse me? Eli didn't flinch. That's right. She and her daughter are staying here while we sort things out. We're getting married next month. When? Mendes raised an eyebrow. That's a new development. Emily nodded, her voice steady. We wanted to keep it private until the paperwork was filed. Blaine's face darkened. You think this little performance fools anyone? Eli stepped forward, his tone ice. You're on my land, accusing a woman of lying to protect her child. She's done nothing wrong. If you had anything solid, you'd have come with a warrant. Mendes shifted uncomfortably. That's enough for now. But Blaine wasn't finished. You're putting this girl in more danger by dragging a stranger into it. If something happens, Eli's voice dropped to a low growl. If something happens, it'll be because you keep showing up where you're not wanted. Blaine turned to Emily. This isn't over. I will be back. She met his eyes with fire in hers. Then I'll be ready. They left soon after, doors slamming, tires spitting gravel. Inside the cabin, Emily collapsed into the nearest chair, her hands trembling. Eli stood by the window, watching the sedan disappear into the woods. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yeah, I did. She looked up at him. He's not going to stop. No, Eli said. But neither am I. Maisie came over and climbed into her mother's lap. Emily hugged her tightly, burying her face in the girl's hair. Outside, the wind picked up again, whistling low through the trees. Eli sat across from them, fingers steepled under his chin. This wasn't just about protecting a stranger anymore. It was about standing his ground. And for the first time in years, he knew what it felt like to have something worth fighting for. That night, the wind howled louder than usual through the pine trees. The old cabin creaked and groaned like it was remembering something it had once tried to forget. Eli sat at the kitchen table, nursing a chipped mug of coffee long gone cold. Across from him, Emily was silent, staring at the wall but not really seeing it. Her hands were wrapped around a blanket, pulled tight to her chest. Maisie had fallen asleep hours ago in Eli's bed, clutching Ruth the chicken's feather, like it was a magic charm. Neither of them had spoken much since Blaine and Officer Mendes drove away. You okay? Eli asked, finally breaking the silence. Emily blinked, then nodded slowly. Yeah, just remembering. He waited. She took a breath. When Maisie was born, Blaine didn't even show up at the hospital. I named her alone, raised her alone. But the moment I tried to leave to start fresh, he suddenly wanted control. He doesn't want her, Eli said. He wants to punish you, Emily nodded. He's always been that way. It's not about love. It's about ownership. Ella leaned forward. You ever press charges, file a report? I did once. He paid off the officer, claimed I was unstable, said I was making it all up, even had a psychologist from his circle declare I was emotionally unfit. Eli muttered a curse under his breath. She looked up at them then, her eyes clear despite the exhaustion. I don't know why you're helping me, Eli. You barely know me, maybe not. But I know what it looks like when someone's being hunted, he said. And I don't like bullies. Silence settled again. Not cold this time, but quiet like shared understanding. The next morning, Emily woke early. The smell of bacon and fresh cornbread filled the air. She walked into the kitchen to find Eli flipping pancakes, a soft hum escaping his lips. You didn't have to, she started. I was up anyway, he said. Figured we could use something warm. Maisie ran in a moment later, barefoot and laughing, chasing a small wooden car Eli had carved for her the night before. For a while, the cabin felt like a Hominot hideout. But peace never lasted long. Around noon, the phone rang. Eli glanced at the caller ID. No number, he picked up. A man's voice, smooth and laced with venom, came through. I hope you're enjoying playing house, Mr. Turner. But let me be clear. You're interfering with a legal matter, and you're going to regret it. Eli didn't flinch. Is that a threat, Harrow? It's a promise. I'm filing for emergency custody. You've got 48 hours before a court date is set. The state will side with stability, not some recluse in the woods. Then I suggest you come with more than threats. Next time. He hung up before Blaine could respond. Emily was watching from the hallway. He's moving fast, she said. Eli nodded. He's scared. What do? We prepare. The next 2 days passed in quiet but focused urgency. Eli reached out to a local retired judge he trusted, Judge Miriam Collins, a sharp-tongued woman in her 70s, who used to be known as the gavel with a conscience. She agreed to meet. On the morning of the third day, Eli drove them into town. The courthouse was a low brick building that smelled of varnish and old paper. Judge Collins met them in her office, glasses perched to the tip of her nose. She listened without interrupting as Emily told her story, everything from the emotional manipulation to the threats, the custody battles, the paid-off therapists, and finally the escape. Miriam didn't blink. When it was over, she looked at Eli. "You vouch for this woman with my life," he said. The judge sat back, tapping her pen against the desk. "There's no formal case filed yet, but I've seen Blaine operate before. He's dangerous and well-connected. If he pushes this, you'll need documentation, testimony, and above all, witnesses." Emily looked down. "Most people who knew us are afraid of him. Then we find someone who isn't," Miriam said, "and we build from there." They left the office with a list of steps: gather medical records, find old friends, request a protective hearing, and file a formal petition for guardianship to establish Eli as a temporary safe guardian, just enough to delay Blaine's legal tactics. Back at the cabin, Eli made calls while Emily dug through her old files. She found a letter from a nurse who once reported a bruise on Maisie's arm, evidence that had been buried. She found emails from Blaine's assistant that hinted at forged documents. Hope began to flicker at the edges, but so did the shadows. That night, as they ate dinner, Eli noticed a car drive slowly down the road. No lights, just the crunch of tires on gravel. It didn't stop, but it didn't feel random either. He stood up. "We need to be ready for anything." Emily stood too. "You think he'd come here? I think he's already watching." She looked toward Maisie's bedroom door. "Then we don't sleep tonight." Eli grabbed his shotgun and checked the shells. Outside, the wind was picking up again, and far down the road, headlights blinked once, then disappeared into the trees. The night crawled in, heavy and slow, like a storm that hadn't yet decided if it would break. Eli stood on the porch, his eyes locked on the distant curve of the gravel road. In one hand, he held the shotgun loosely by his side. In the other, a flashlight he never once turned on. He didn't need light to feel the presence out there. Something or someone was watching. He could feel it in his bones, the way an old soldier senses a trap before the first twig snaps. Inside, Emily paced the length of the living room, her nerves fraying with every tick of the clock. She had put Maisie to bed hours ago, but she knew the girl wasn't sleeping. She was lying still under the covers, pretending too afraid to ask why Mom's voice was tense or why Mr. Turner hadn't come inside yet. "You should get some rest," Eli said when he finally stepped back in. Emily looked at him, face pale in the lamplight. "You know I can't." He gave her a soft nod, then motioned to the couch. "You sit, I'll talk." He pulled a chair closer and sat across from her. "I was 20 when I got shipped to Iraq. Thought I was invincible. Came back with shrapnel in my leg and a head full of ghosts. Spent 2 years drinking myself into silence until a woman named Nain pulled me out of it. She taught me how to work with my hands, how to listen, how to slow down. I owe her everything." Emily's eyes softened. "Where is she now?" "Past cancer. Fast and cruel." His voice caught, but he cleared it. "After that, I moved out here. I didn't want to be around people, but somehow people keep finding me." Emily half smiled. "I guess you give off a certain reliability, or I just live next to a fence that's too tempting." She chuckled, then leaned back, exhaling for the first time in hours. "What do we do, Eli? Really, if Blaine gets custody?" "He won't," Eli said firmly. "But we don't just wait anymore. We go on the offensive." She tilted her head. Meaning tomorrow we drive out to Jenkins Hill. There's a woman there, Cora Sanders. She was Maisie's old daycare provider, right?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yes. She filed a concern once after Blaine dropped Maisie off with a black eye. She might be willing to speak up now, especially if she knows a judge is watching. But what if she's afraid?" Eli's voice hardened. "Then we remind her what happens when good people stay quiet." The next morning was gray and cold. Fog curled around the edges of the trees like smoke. They left before dawn, Eli driving an old Ford pickup that groaned on the hills, but still had fight left in it. Emily sat beside him, clutching a worn folder filled with every scrap of evidence she'd gathered. Maisie stayed behind with Miss Ruby, their tired nurse who lived 2 miles down the road and owed Eli more than a few favors. Jenkins Hill was an hour away. By the time they reached it, the sun was just beginning to burn through the mist. Cora's house was a squat, cheerful cottage with a garden gone wild in the front yard. She opened the door before they even knocked, eyes wide with surprise. "Emily," she said. "Hi, Ka." Emily's voice was tentative but steady. "Can we talk?" They sat at her kitchen table. Cora poured coffee, her hands trembling slightly. As Emily spoke, Cora's face went through a cycle of reactions: shock, guilt, fear, and finally resolve. "I remember that day," Cora said. "Maisie had a bruise on her arm. She said Daddy was mad about a spilled drink. I made a report, but nobody followed up. A week later, Blaine sent 2 men to my home to remind me who had friends in the sheriff's department." Eli leaned forward. "Would you be willing to sign an affidavit or testify?" Cora hesitated, then looked at Emily. "You believe he'll take her from you?" Emily nodded, her voice a whisper. "He doesn't want her. He just wants to win." Cora's jaw said, "Then yes, I'll speak." As they drove back, Eli glanced over. One down. Emily's grip on the folder loosened slightly. A small win, but it's something. When they returned, Miss Ruby met them on the porch. Her face was tight. "You had a visitor. Said he was a lawyer. Drop this off." She handed Eli a thick envelope. Inside was a formal petition. Blaine had filed an emergency custody order. Hearing set in 5 days. Attached were photos edited to show Emily looking disheveled, Maisie crying, and a log of alleged abductions. Emily's hands shook as she read, "He made me look like I kidnapped my own child." Eli scanned the papers, then handed them to Ruby. "This is manufactured and fast. He's cutting corners." "We need a lawyer," Emily whispered. "A good one. I'll call Judge Collins. See if she can refer someone," Eli said. That evening they sat in silence again. The weight of what was coming pressed on them from all sides. Eli broke the quiet first. "You ever think about leaving the state?" Emily looked up. "Running?" "Not running. Starting over in a place where Blaine's name means nothing. I've thought about it every day since Maisie turned 2, but he'd chase us. He'd find us." "Not if the law's on your side," Eli said. She looked at him, really looked. "Why are you still here, Eli? This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is," he said, voice low but firm. "Because once you see injustice, you can't unsee it. And because I've made peace with who I used to be. But I won't make peace with letting a man like Blaine win." A long silence followed. Then Emily reached over, her fingers brushing his, and for the first time, it wasn't about pretending anymore. The next morning, Emily woke with a start. For a second, she didn't know where she was. The walls were paneled wood, not the pale blue of her old bedroom. It took a moment before she remembered. Eli's house. Safety and danger still looming like a cloud on the horizon. Downstairs, the smell of coffee drifted up like a gentle invitation. She found Eli already dressed, seated at the kitchen table in his flannel shirt, reading over legal documents with his glasses perched low on his nose. His concentration was intense, brows furrowed, lips pressed into a line. "Morning," she said softly. He looked up, gave a brief but warm smile. "Sleep okay? I did better than I expected." She paused, then stepped closer. "Thank you, Eli, for everything." He didn't respond right away. Just handed her a mug. "We've got 5 days, and Blaine's not slowing down." "Judge Collins called back?" she asked, taking a sip. She did. "She's angry this petition was even allowed through on such short notice. She's pushing it up the chain, but it's tricky. Blaine's father was a big donor to the DA's office back in the day." Emily rolled her eyes. "Of course he was." Eli stood, paced for a moment, then turned. "But there's someone, a defense attorney named Janice Rowe. Used to be federal, now private practice out of Austin. Collins said she's sharp, doesn't flinch. She'll be expensive," Emily said quietly. "I'll handle it." Emily's eyes widened. "You don't have to." "Yes." He cut in, calm but firm. "I do." Before she could protest further, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped their attention to the front window. A sleek black SUV, government plates. Emily's stomach dropped. "Who?" The door knocked. Not a knock. A rap, confident, controlled. Eli answered it. A tall black woman in a navy suit stood with a badge held forward. "Agent Denise Harper, Department of Child Protection, Special Investigations." Emily's throat went dry. "2 didn't call anyone." "No," Agent Harper said, "but someone did. And when we get anonymous tips involving a potential misuse of emergency custody petitions, we investigate." They let her in. She asked questions sharp but not cruel. She asked about Maisie's bruises from 2 years ago, about Blaine's business records, about a certain complaint filed by Cora Sanders that had mysteriously disappeared. Then she asked, "And who's the man listed on your daughter's school paperwork as father figure?" Eli stiffened slightly. Emily glanced at him. Then she spoke. That was my idea, not his. We were trying to buy time so Maisie could stay enrolled without triggering another investigation. She's finally stable. Agent Harper tilted her head. You're not married. No, Eli answered calmly. And yet you signed consent forms for medical care and school pickups? I did, he said. Because I was there. Every single time Blaine didn't show. I made sure that child got what she needed, and I'll keep doing it no matter what title I do or don't have. There was silence for a beat. Then Agent Harper clicked her pen. We're pulling Blaine's records. His emergency order will be reviewed by the ethics board. I can't promise what the judge will decide, but I'll make sure the truth makes it to the hearing. She stood. Oh, and one more thing. Keep your phones on. If Blaine retaliates, call me directly. He has a history and we're not blind to it anymore. After she left, Emily collapsed into the nearest chair. That woman, she was like a hurricane. Eli grinned. The good kind. They spent the rest of the day gathering evidence. Every photo, every voicemail, every scrap of documentation Emily had ever saved. Eli made digital copies. They called Janice Rowe, and by late afternoon she was on speakerphone, voice crisp, direct, and oddly comforting. This is winnable, she said, but only if you both stay ahead. Blaine will try to push emotional buttons. Do not engage in public. No social media, no reactive messages. We need to look calm, stable, unflappable. Emily nodded. What about Maisie? Protect her. Don't let her near Blaine. If he shows up, you call the police in my office. Do not let him corner you without witnesses. That night, Emily tucked Maisie into bed, brushing her daughter's curls gently behind one ear. Are we okay, Mama? The girl asked. We're going to be, Emily said softly. We've got people helping us now. Maisie yawned and snuggled into the covers. I like Mr. Turner. He makes the house smell like firewood and pancakes. Emily smiled, tears prickling her eyes. Yeah, me too. Downstairs, Eli was reviewing court precedent. When Emily joined him, she stood there for a long moment, just watching him work steady, strong, endlessly patient. You never said what you did before the army, she murmured. He looked up. Mechanical engineering. Then I walked away from it. Why? Because I built things for people who broke them on purpose. Emily studied him. Well, you're building something here, just so you know. He didn't answer. But in the flickering light of the desk lamp, she saw something shift in his expression. Something deeper than duty. Something quietly protective, like the way people guard the most fragile things they love. Outside, the wind picked up. A storm was coming, but this time Emily felt something she hadn't in a long time. Prepared, not alone, ready. The courthouse steps were slick with rain when Eli parked the truck across the street. He glanced at Emily beside him. She sat stiffly, dressed in a modest navy blue dress, her fingers twisting a cheap bracelet she hadn't worn in years. The courthouse loomed in front of them, tall and indifferent. You ready? Eli asked quietly. Emily gave a weak nod, as I'll ever be. Inside, the air was heavy with polished wood and whispers. Janice Rowe was already waiting by the courtroom doors, a leather folder under one arm and a calm fire in her eyes. I filed our latest motion last night, she said without preamble. The judge will read it during recess, but Blaine's team is playing hard. They're trying to paint you as emotionally unstable and Eli as a shadow influence. Emily blinked. A what? They're suggesting he manipulated you into distancing Maisie from her father. Janice tilted her head toward Eli. You ready for that kind of scrutiny? Eli's jaw tensed. Let them try. They stepped inside. The courtroom was medium-sized, not grand, but with enough space for discomfort. Blaine was already seated at the plaintiff's table in an expensive charcoal suit. His eyes locked on Emily with a smug flicker one that chilled her spine. Maisie sat with Cora Sanders in the back row, coloring quietly. Agent Harper was seated nearby, her sharp gaze scanning every face. For once, Emily felt the power shift in the room just slightly. The judge entered. All rise. What followed was 3 hours of back and forth. Blaine's lawyer, a lean, smirking man named Huxley Granger, tried everything, questioning Emily's past mental health records, citing old medication prescriptions, even implying Eli and Emily's relationship was improper. Janice stood like steel. Improper? Are we living in 1960, counselor? She presented medical records, photographs of bruises Blaine had dismissed, Maisie's school performance reports showing drastic improvements after Emily left him. She even played a voicemail Blaine had left 3 months ago, angry, slurred, threatening. Judge Harrow's face darkened at that one. But then Huxley turned to Eli. "Mr. Turner, you have no legal guardianship over the child." "Correct?" "No, sir," Eli replied. "And yet you picked her up from school on multiple occasions. She called me when Blaine didn't show up. You don't find that unusual?" "I find a 6-year-old waiting alone outside a locked school door unusual," Eli replied, his tone level but firm. There was a murmur from the gallery. Huxley pressed harder. "Mr. Turner, were you ever romantically involved with Miss Harper prior to this arrangement? Number. Have you developed romantic feelings for her since?" Janice stood. "Objection, Your Honor. Relevance." Judge Harrow raised a brow. Sustained, but the question hung in the air. Emily's cheeks burned and she dared not look at Eli. During a break, she found herself in the hallway alone with her thoughts. Rain tapped against the high windows like fingers trying to break in. She leaned her forehead against the cool marble wall. "You okay?" came a voice behind her. "Eli." She turned, trying to smile. "I hate all of this, I know." There was a pause. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "He made it sound like loving you would be something shameful." Eli didn't move, didn't speak, but his eyes, deep and unreadable, searched hers. "Would it?" she asked, heart pounding. He exhaled slowly. "Emily, I'm not here to be someone else's shame. But if this is real, if this becomes something more, it has to survive outside courtrooms and custody battles." She looked down. "I know. I didn't expect all this." He offered his hand. Not romantic. Steady like always. She took it. Back in the courtroom, Janice had her closing argument ready. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Your Honor, the question today is not about titles or bloodlines. It's about safety. It's about history. It's about a child who, when afraid, calls not her father, but the man who showed up again and again." She turned briefly to Blaine. "This court doesn't owe Mr. Blaine Harper a second chance at redemption. Not when he hasn't earned it." When the judge recessed to deliberate, Emily sat quietly beside Eli in the hallway. No one spoke, not even Maisie, who had fallen asleep against Cora's arm. An hour later, they were called back. Judge Harrow's voice was even unreadable. "After reviewing testimony, evidence, and the full history of the parties involved, I am making the following ruling. Emergency custody is hereby terminated. Full legal custody of Maisie Harper shall remain with her mother, Emily Harper, until further proceedings require otherwise." Emily's breath left her body like air from a balloon. Judge Harrow wasn't done. "Furthermore, this court formally censures the conduct of Mr. Blaine Harper in misrepresenting his circumstances. Any attempt to further petition this court without demonstrable change will be viewed as contempt." Blaine stood, his face mottled with fury. He opened his mouth to speak, but Agent Harper was already on her feet. "Mr. Harper, a word," she said coldly. Outside, the room emptied slowly, but Emily couldn't move. Not until Maisie ran into her arms. "You're not going anywhere, baby," Emily whispered, crying openly now. "We're okay." Janice patted Eli on the shoulder. "You held up better than most clients I've had." He gave a small smile. "We're not done yet, are we?" "No," she said, "but this was a damn good start." Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds began to lift, pale sunlight slipping through like a quiet promise. Eli opened the truck door for them. Maisie climbed in, still clutching her coloring book. Emily hesitated, then turned to him. "Thank you." He shook his head. "You don't owe me that." "I know," she said, "but I still mean it." They stood there for a beat longer. Then, quietly, Emily reached out and took his hand again, not out of desperation this time, but choice. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something else. The air felt different after the ruling. Not lighter, not exactly, but clearer. Like the storm had passed, even if the clouds still lingered. Back at the house, Emily stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup, the rhythmic motion grounding her while Maisie watched cartoons in the next room. She glanced over her shoulder every now and then, still half waiting for someone to rip away the calm. Trauma had its own clock. It didn't reset just because a gavel came down. Eli had stepped out to pick up groceries, insisting they needed something celebratory but responsible, which apparently meant strawberry shortcake and lemon iced tea. He returned an hour later, soaked from a brief drizzle and holding a paper bag like it contained treasure. Maisie bolted to the door. "Did you get marshmallows for the cocoa or your victory parade?" Eli asked with a grin. "Both?" He handed her the bag. Emily watched from the kitchen doorway, her arms folded, but her heart more open than it had been in months. Maybe longer. Later, as Maisie dozed off on the couch, curled beneath a blanket with the television humming in the background, Emily and Eli found themselves on the back porch. The air was cool and damp, and crickets sang from the tall grass beyond the fence. A soft light poured from the kitchen window behind them, casting their shadows long across the floorboards. Emily held a mug of tea, cradling it like armor. Do you ever wonder if peace like this can last? Eli leaned back in the old rocking chair, one leg stretched out, his voice low. I stopped asking that question a long time ago. Now I just try to hold on to the good when it shows up. She nodded slowly. I keep waiting for Blaine to pull something else. He might, Eli admitted. But now he knows he's not the only one in the ring. She smiled. Just a flicker. That's not nothing. They sat in silence for a while, broken only by the creak of the rocker and the distant sound of an owl. Emily spoke again, quieter this time. I didn't plan to fall into anyone's life, let alone yours. I know, but you didn't push me away, even when I brought a storm with me. Eli turned toward her, his expression unreadable, but soft around the edges. Maybe I was tired of calm that never meant anything. She looked at him. Really looked at him. The lines in his face spoke of years he rarely spoke of. The calm in his voice wasn't passivity. It was earned stillness, the kind that came from surviving things without making noise about them. Then something unexpected. Her phone buzzed on the table behind them. Emily flinched, her heart tripping before her hand even reached for it. One look at the screen and her breath caught. It wasn't Blaine. It was Cora Sanders. Emily answered immediately. Cora? Emily, you need to come to the station. What? Why? I can't explain over the phone. Just come bring Eli if you can. Click. Emily turned to Eli. Something's wrong. 10 minutes later, they were in the truck, barreling down quiet streets lit only by scattered street lamps. The sheriff's department stood like a quiet sentinel in the night. Cora was waiting just inside, her face drawn tight. She led them down a hallway to a back office where Agent Harper was already seated, arms crossed, a folder open in front of her. You might want to sit, she said. Emily stayed standing. What is it? Harper flipped the folder toward them. Inside were printed photos, grainy surveillance stills. Blaine in a car talking to someone through the window. The man's face was turned slightly away, but enough was visible. Emily gasped. Is that Judge Harrow? Harper nodded grimly. Taken 2 nights before your hearing. We've confirmed a cash transfer between Blaine's offshore account and a shell company tied to the judge's cousin. Eli's face darkened. He tried to buy the ruling. Looks like it, Harper replied. We're building a case now, but it's going to take time. Emily gripped the back of the chair. So, what does that mean for us? It means the case could be reopened under a different judge, Harper said. But more than that, it means Blaine's not done. He's panicking, and panicked people do stupid things. Eli's voice was steel. Then we need to be ready, Harper nodded, and keep everything locked down. No contact, no response to anything he sends. We'll handle the surveillance, Cora added. And I'll be parking outside your house the next few nights just in case. Emily felt the familiar tightness return to her chest. The illusion of safety had lasted less than a day, but as they walked out into the night again, Eli reached for her hand. This time she didn't hesitate. Back at the house, she stood in Maisie's room, watching her sleep. Asmal's stuffed elephant tucked under her arm, her lips parted in that innocent way children forget how to do once they grow afraid. Emily tucked the blanket tighter around her daughter, whispering promises she wasn't sure how to keep yet. Outside, Eli stood by the fence, arms crossed, watching, guarding. When she joined him, he didn't speak. Neither did she. They just stood there side by side, facing the dark together. Because now they both understood this wasn't over. Not by a long shot, but they weren't alone anymore. And maybe that too was a kind of beginning. The morning after the station visit dawned colder than expected. Fog hung low over Thaird, wrapping the fence line in silver-gray mist. Eli was already outside, sipping coffee from a metal thermos, his eyes scanning the quiet road in front of the house like a man waiting for war. He didn't say much when Emily joined him, just handed her a second cup he'd filled without asking. She took it, grateful. Inside, Maisie was still sleeping, thankfully unaware of the late-night revelations or the surveillance that now circled their lives like invisible sentinels. Emily hadn't slept much. She'd spent most of the night trying to unravel the implications of Judge Harrow's betrayal, Blaine's desperation, and the knowledge that their short-lived victory was just the start of a longer battle. Eli spoke first, voice growly. I patched the gate. The latch was loose. Someone could have forced it. Emily tightened her grip on the mug. Do you think he'll come here? Not himself, but someone. He paused. The kind of men who take money to do dirty work don't knock first. That truth sat heavy in there between them. Around noon, a black SUV pulled into the driveway, not blazed but unmarked. Ka stepped out first, her expression serious. Behind her was Harper, clipboard in hand. "We need to talk," Harper said. They sat around the kitchen table with Eli at the head, Emily beside him, her fingers laced tightly. "There's more," Harper began. "We traced Blaine's last few calls. One went to a man named Marcus Denton, former Marine, dishonorably discharged. He's been working as private security off the books for some questionable clients. We believe he's been hired to intimidate you." "Intimidate?" Eli asked, voice sharp. "Or worse?" Harper didn't flinch. "We don't know, but we need to relocate you temporarily." Emily's heart sank. "We just got our lives back." "And we'll protect that," Cora said gently. "But we can't do it if you stay in one place where they know to look." Eli looked to Emily. "Whatever keeps Maisie safe." "Huh?" Emily hesitated only a moment, then nodded. "All right, where?" "An old ranger station upstate," Harper said. "Private, off-grid, secure. We'll monitor communications and keep a unit nearby." 2 hours later, they were packed. Emily moved like someone boxing up not just belongings, but memories too fresh to be called past. Maisie asked questions why they were leaving again, why she couldn't take her treehouse. Emily knelt and cupped her daughter's face. "It's just a little trip," she said softly. "To a place where we can be extra safe. You remember what safe feels like, don't you?" Maisie nodded slowly. That night they drove north in a convoy. Cora in own car, Harper in another, and Eli behind the wheel of the truck, Emily beside him, Maisie asleep in the back seat with her stuffed elephant hugged tight. The trees thickened around them the farther they drove, and the stars above appeared clearer, untouched by city light. The ranger station was a sturdy log cabin with a wraparound porch and a view of a quiet lake beyond. Remote, unassuming, safe for now. They settled in slowly. Emily unpacked kitchen supplies. Eli double-checked locks and Harper set up a laptop and radios in the back room, turning it into a makeshift command post. That night, after Maisie was asleep, the three adults gathered by the fireplace. Harper briefed them on the next step. Subpoenas, investigations, quiet surveillance of Blaine's accounts. "I don't think he'll stop unless we make him," Eli said. "He won't," Harper agreed. "But we're building the case. Every call, every dollar trail, every threat, it's stacking up." Emily stared into the fire. "I'm tired of being afraid." Cora leaned forward. "Then let's take the fear and do something with it. Use it to finish this." Emily looked over at Eli, who reached over and gently took her hand. "We'll see it through," he said. Together, the next few days were tense but quiet. Emily taught Maisie lessons by the window, her voice calm, even as her eyes flicked to the trees. Eli cleaned out the old shed and found a dusty bike that Maisie claimed like treasure. Harper came and went, updating them on the legal case. They lived suspended in time like people waiting for a verdict to fall from the sky. And then it did. A call came just before dawn. Harper's voice was electric. "We got him." Emily sat up straight in bed. "What do you mean?" The judge flipped. Harrow admitted everything. The bribes, the manipulation, the threats. "We have enough to charge Blaine with conspiracy, witness intimidation, and fraud." Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for weeks. "But there's more," Harper continued. "Denton's missing. We think Blaine cut him loose once he realized the net was closing in." Eli walked in, hearing just enough to frown. "So he's still out there?" "Yes," Harper said, "but his employer's about to be handcuffed. Denton won't risk exposure without a paycheck. We'll keep your location secure until he's caught." That morning, they stood on the porch, watching fog rise from the lake. Emily leaned against Eli's shoulder. "It's not the end," she whispered. "No," he agreed. "But it's the first morning in a long time where it feels like we're starting something new." Maisie came out, rubbing her eyes barefoot on the wood. "Is it over?" Emily knelt. "Almost, baby." The three of them stood together, side by side, the sunlight just beginning to cut through the fog. It wasn't safety they had yet, not completely, but they had each other. They had truth. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't running. They were ready.